it didn't matter. The whole gym stopped. No one was moving. Everybody was just looking at the TVs. And then he hits that ball, throws the bat. It was insane. Like, I did a whole lap. I ran all the way down, screaming, ran back. It was nuts, you know?
Hey, everybody, this is Greg Zahn.
This is Anthony Telford.
You're listening to The Walk-Off with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
All right, very pleased to be joined right now by former collegiate player with the Kamloops Wolfpack. He is the assistant coach as well as the strength and conditioning coach for the under-15 AAA Calgary Cardinals, Matt Wild. Welcome to The Walk-Off, bud.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us. I hear Adam mentioned that it was your birthday on Tuesday, so a happy belated to you.
It was. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're what, 33 now?
32.
32, you're like, don't age me like that.
Oh, man, I completely lost track anyway. It took me a while to figure out how old I was turning this year.
Well, that's pretty young for a guy with well over a decade of coaching experience, eh?
Yeah, I kind of realized that in talking with Adam the other day, actually.
Well, I mean, you guys started out in coaching together, right? That was the first gig you ever had, was back in high school.
That's exactly it. I think I was 14, I think. Maybe a year or so older than that.
So what were you coaching?
We were coaching, what was it, tadpole baseball. So like 9-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And it was a blast. Yeah, definitely.
You guys were obviously heroes to them.
I mean, Adam was for sure. I don't know about me necessarily. They seem to definitely favor him a bit.
Did he have a huge beard even then?
Yeah, intimidating, always. Like the moment I met him, he had a better beard than I can get today. Which when you're a year older at 15 or so, that's tough.
So to get into coaching at 14 and 15, what was it about your early coaching experience that kind of made you go, you know what, this has got to be a part of my life?
Honestly, just kind of the whole thing. Like, I think in the back of my mind of my whole time playing, I always kind of wanted that. I've always been wanting to be kind of that big brother, the mentor, help people kind of feel like part of the team, stuff like that. And then, yeah, that first experience went about as smooth as it could go, I would say. Coaching.
There were no bumps in the road. You and Adam just nailed it out of the park.
We did pretty good. I mean, we kind of got left out of the draft day. So we got given the leftovers. And I think by the end of it, we were the top team in the league. So it felt pretty good doing that.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I mean, there was definitely bumps in the road. There was a few of those typical little kid baseball moments, you know, picking grass in the outfield, things like that. You just kind of have to laugh at because, I mean, they're 8, 9, you know, can't really get too upset.
So now you're living in Calgary.
Yeah.
And you've been here for how long now?
A decade now. I moved out here in 2010.
So tell me a little bit then. I know Calgary youth baseball in general, and I'm talking from players landing on college teams, guys and gals getting national recognition out of the Calgary area, even being drafted to the pros, which was something that never happened years ago. So if you could kind of, despite the ignorance of the people in Calgary knowing this, how much progress baseball has made in this area, if you could kind of tell us a little bit about the Cardinals organization and just the under-15 league in general, and obviously as a Calgary guy, how much progress you've seen in youth development in this area.
Yeah. I mean, to start that off,
don't mind while I give you 8 questions at once.
Yeah, I guess so the Cardinals, I'll start there. They're a newer organization in town. They've only been around for about 6 years now.
Okay.
So they're still in that kind of process of building up, kind of developing a solid program year in, year out. I've been part of their program for a year now. And even just the stuff I've heard from the coaches that brought me into the organization from beforehand to now, the direction, the momentum of everything right now, it's a really cool thing to be a part of. The U15 league as a whole, being that my only year working with them has been through this crazy COVID season, has been a little, I'd say, less than typical. But I mean, all things considered, I don't think we could have pulled off a better year this year for the boys. Like, we were really, really hoping and motivated to try to get them something Like we knew this year was messed up. Their school years were weird. Other sports were canceled entirely.
Yeah.
So it was a really big priority for us to try to at least make this available for them within all the safety guidelines and everything that were put out by the government. And yeah, I think throughout our whole organization, pretty much every team, every age seemed to have a good year, got a good number of games in, and saw a lot of progress. That was the really cool part, that even with the weird season we had, everybody was taking steps forward and kind of taking ownership of it, despite the craziness that this year brought everybody.
Well, it's incredibly impressive you even pulled off a season, because I can imagine at 13 and 14, right? Like missing a year, that would be, I mean,
That's
forget
right.
about the developmental side of things. Just like mentally for these kids, it would have been the worst.
That's it. Like that was my biggest thought, was when I was 13, 14, if you would have taken at that point hockey away from me, because I didn't really start ball till I was about 15. If you would have taken that away from me, I would have been a wreck, and who knows?
Well, we were all still going to make the NHL at 13.
That's it, and like 1 year without, I'm gone. No one's going to draft me now, and then I have that excuse to rely on for the rest of my life. It's like, well, I missed that 1 year. Is a big development year though,
Yeah.
But yeah, and then
how intense are your guys at 13 and 14?
We got a pretty good mix. Like we've got a few kids that you can see are dialed in, like they got their eyes on the future. They're looking for help, asking all the questions, just kind of taking those steps, that initiative, which at those young ages is pretty crazy to see. Because again, I think of myself at 13 and I loved the sport, but I really wasn't locked in like that, But then we also get some kids that are they're pretty talented. They make our team and, they kind of just have fun. That's one of the things I actually love about baseball, is you get such a dynamic group of people on a team of, 15 to, at the major leagues, 40 guys.
Yeah.
You get jokers, you get super intense screamers, you get everything in between, versus like a lot of other sports, I think, kind of self-select. You don't get a lot of real deep, quiet, cerebral guys in NFL football,
No, that's really
It's
interesting, man. That is a really good point. Hockey's the same way. It seems to draw from the same intellectual group, I guess, like the same sort of thinkers. Whereas when you look at baseball, you're right, a very diverse mindset tend to play baseball. So, and I'm actually curious about that, because I mean, you're the strength and conditioning coach for the Cardinals. So when you're dealing with 13 and 14-year-olds, what are you trying to develop? Is it mostly good habits and fundamentals? When it comes to strength and conditioning, what is your focus?
That's exactly it. Basically at this age, like number one, we still want to make sure they love the game. This shouldn't feel like a chore. Like when I think back to my hockey days, that was I never enjoyed strength and conditioning while I played hockey. Because for some reason it felt like discipline. Like it was like we were getting in trouble. Like, you guys have already had 3 practices, gone to school this week, done your homework, done your extra skill stuff on your own, and now we want you here to do squats. And I never got they never gave me the context. If they would have just said, hey, you squat a lot, you'll skate fast, you'll knock the guy down, you'll be better, I would have never stopped squatting. Like all day long, I would have just squatted, because that, to me, that's what I was doing it for. But it seemed like a lot of coaching back in the day just never gave the context. It was kind of, we're doing this, it's good for you, just listen and do it. So that's a big part.
That is so astute, because I know that was one of the big things, even in school, the way that teaching used to be presented to you. It's like, why are we doing this? Don't worry about why. You got to get this done.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas giving kind of a reason, and I'm sure you even see, because we're still at a little bit the tail end of the suck it up version of sports, right? Where it's just like, shut your mouth, do your business, don't worry about what's hurting, the pain. And you're kind of in this phase where like kids are changing. Are you seeing it within this new generation of kids? Like, are they approaching the game differently?
I'd say definitely. Like I'm kind of in that mix. Like I grew up in that old school, suck it up. You assume everyone else is hurting the same way you are. And if you talk about it, then you're just, a wuss, basically, right? So you just be quiet and assume they're in the same pain. and one, like that's one of the reasons I got into strength coaching specifically, is I feel like that got me hurt so often as a kid. I would be putting in the effort and just not know the proper direction to put it in, and not know when to say, hey, something doesn't feel right. I would just assume it was right. I'm doing what they say and just keep going until I bash my head into the wall, you know?
Oh, I hear you. I didn't even play high level ball. I remember being 14 and throwing the baseball until my arm hurt so bad I couldn't lift it, and then doing it again the next day, right? So that's got to be something that you're fairly cognizant of, right? I know that 13 and 14-year-olds are probably the most resilient age group you could possibly have, but injuries is still a concern, right?
That's a huge thing. So that's exactly it. So like the team I came into last year had some bad luck with some injuries. And being that I've had that experience as being the just go type of guy, I really look for those signs. Because again, a 13, 14-year-old kid, by the time they tell you they're hurting, their arm is falling off.
Yeah.
You know? And so I really take it on myself. And this is where I feel like a good strength coach or a good athletic therapist that knows anatomy, physiology, like signs of that stuff is so useful on sports teams. And I wish they could be on every youth sports team around, because the amount of minor injuries and major injuries down the road you can avoid by just seeing something 3 innings early can change a whole year for that kid, you know?
Yeah.
So like this year in the beginning stages, because our on-ramp phase got kind of muffled with the initial quarantine and stuff, the boys didn't get to build up that natural arm strength through the spring. So start of the season rolls around and we're kind of thrown right into a couple practices a week and trying to get exhibition games. I'd say it was about 3 weeks in, and we had like a good handful of our pitchers were all complaining about their arms being sore, which is pretty normal at that point. Like if it was 2 months earlier in the spring, that would be the phase that would happen in.
Right.
So we really started trying to emphasize why our warm-up's so important, why we're doing the things we're doing, how it's going to help that, putting in some basic kind of recovery protocols for after they throw, or if they start to feel symptoms of this, basically little like self-checks you can do. You don't need to pitch or even just play in pain, you know, and that's my big thing I want to get through to them. When you feel something, tell us. 9 times out of 10, there's stuff we can do about it. And not even necessarily to get you back playing, because again, at this age, to me, winning is way under development.
Right.
I want to get them back to just feeling good, because when you feel good, you'll develop better. And if you develop better long term, the organization's going to win at every level. And it was crazy. Like I didn't expect to get as quick of a buy-in. Like everybody by the next week almost, we did a couple little additional like arm care routines after practice for a week or so. Kind of showed them some of the movements, and pretty much from then on, like the moment they'd finish pitching, they'd come grab me in the dugout. Hey, can you help me do this? Bap, bap, bap. And we had pretty much no, like not even like, oh, my arm is sore type issues for the rest of the year.
That is
I'm obviously
incredible.
Like can't take all credit for that. That's just a knock on wood lucky season. You know, like a sport like baseball, stuff happens. But yeah, to see them get the buy-in and the understanding and really get why we're doing everything, and then look over at other teams and say, well, why aren't they doing this stuff, was really cool to see as a coach.
Well, arm injuries, especially, I mean, it's a little bit of an epidemic in the game of baseball and has been ignored for far too long. And I mean, you even see it in the major leagues, and a lot of times in the bullpen, guys are kind of viewed almost as disposable, right? I mean, it's why teams are rebuilding bullpens all the time. So when you're dealing with a 13 or 14-year-old and you're trying to get across just to have the mentality of, you know what, the best thing you can do when something's sore is to tell us, is to be inform the trainers or to be aware of it yourself. What are you trying to build towards when you're working a 13-year-old's arms out?
So like short term or long term?
I guess a little of both. Like, are you trying to build up their muscle mass? Are you getting them to throw a lot? Or like, what's the process, I guess is the question.
So I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into play. I'd say the biggest things, especially kids at that age, number one, I'd say a common misconception with kids at that age and with arm care stuff in general with baseball is if it's sore, just stretch it.
Right.
I don't know many 13-year-olds that aren't made out of rubber. You get like 1 or 2 per team that are stiff and rigid and tight, and everyone else can bend their arm back to, Timbuktu.
Yeah.
Most of them don't need to stretch that more. What they need to do is learn to stabilize and get strong in the range of motion that they have available. So a lot of what I work on is trying to build that feel, that kind of proprioception to know, am I actually using that thing properly? And then, so starting at the ages as young as they are, long-term, the view is that they can dang near coach themselves. They know when things don't feel right. They know when it clicks and it feels good. And by the time they're 16, 17, 18, working with these higher level pitching coaches, maybe going off to college, things like that, they can go to a coach and basically say, hey, this is what I got. These are my strengths. This is where I struggle. This is what I'm doing. Make me better. And if the coach can't, pretty crappy coach. But in the same case, sometimes that happens. You're on a team with someone that just isn't equipped to help you in the way you need. If you know what you got to do to feel good, perform good, and keep getting better, it's going to limit a lot of that frustration or a wasted year of development on a coach that just didn't get you.
Have you ever run into that with a kid where you're like, I'm just not connecting with this particular player, or have you kind of?
I find with the kids, I actually have a decent time relating with them, being that I grew up playing sports, and like a lot of these kids, for them, it's been primarily hockey growing up. Like that's been the number one. And this is that age where you kind of start to realize, it kind of shakes out and you're like, well, dang, maybe I do actually really enjoy this baseball thing.
Yeah.
So for getting a lot of
typical Canada, eh?
pretty much. But yeah, getting a lot of players to kind of buy in and understand what you're doing, I'll relate it to hockey. The mechanics, the mobility we're working on with your hip here, that's going to show up in your slap shot, man. And then they go, oh, well, this is useful in either sport, because athleticism is athleticism.
Of course.
In varying degrees on how much strength, power, mobility, all that stuff's required. Generally, I'd say 75, 80% of the principles are the same. It's just kind of how you use the principles or perform them,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those ages, the primary focus is building stability, coordination, understanding for how their body works and is built. And then, yeah, just over time, kind of continue developing that, polish that rock, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's a lot less about changing people. I guess that's where the other part of the question comes in is, I play a lot of beer league softball as well, being a washed up, not so great baseball player. I don't know how many times at beer league softball I've heard people that have played maybe no baseball ever outside of it, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
Sit there and try to dissect someone else's swing and why they're missing and how it's wrong. And that back elbow has got to be up or it's got to be down. And every 2 people says it's different, because in the whole reality of the swing itself, none of that really matters. Your elbow is going to be different based on how your shoulder moves.
Right.
So if I have really mobile shoulders, I can be up here and still swing level. If I don't, my shoulder is going to have to be down a bit lower, or my elbow, I should say.
Yeah.
Little things like that for years I would just take that advice and be like, oh, well, they must see something I don't see, crank my elbow up. And then
you're like, this feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I'm even worse than I was before, which is saying something, So it was a lot about that. So getting the kids to realize like, no, this is where your body's comfortable and where it does its motion the best. It's going to look different on everyone. Like you can look at every baseball player on a roster and all 9 of them have a different swing. And it's just so individual. And I think that's a big part of it is for years, we were always trying to find that general program to kind of work most of the kids.
Yeah.
And within that, you'd kind of mess up probably mechanics on a few kids that just looked a little funky, And how many of the best pitchers of all time kind of move a little funky?
For sure. You could say the same thing about hitters.
That's it, right? So, like baseball, you get, again, a lot of those different body types, shapes. That short, stocky guy probably is not going to have the same swing as tall, lanky, Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
Bellinger and Alejandro Kirk, they're going to look completely different. But they're going to get the job done.
2 better comparables there. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, really, you're building the bricks of development then for these kids. You know, they're 13, 14, they're moving up in the ranks.
Mhm.
The under 15 league, I'm sure, has been incredibly valuable just for the Calgary area in general.
Mhm.
I hear they're working on a under 13 and an under 18, or
Yeah, so we normally run a U11, U13, 15, and an 18. This past year, we didn't have a U13 group just because numbers with COVID and stuff.
right?
And that's every year the Cardinals are going to be running with teams at every age. Over time, as we get bigger, we might end up running into multiple teams even. But the big thing we started developing this year, was kind of getting that strength and conditioning program started with the future kind of in mind. So again, kind of working with the kids that I coached last year was a nice way to get them just right into the gym, understanding what we're doing. And then, we're in the process of working with setting up something for the U18 group and the younger group as well. And the idea basically is like the U13s would be even more kind of just foundational, learn how to move, build some coordination, kind of just, learn about your body essentially and
Right.
how to use it in a safe way. And then that U15 group, we're starting to get a lot more into some specific strength, building some power, kind of individualizing things a bit. And then the idea would become U18s. It's a lot more performance based. So by then, if
Right.
they've been in our program for 3, 4, 6 years already, they've got multiple years building that foundation at different levels. By the time they're 18, they can handle the workloads that a college pitching coach is going to put at them. Versus, I mean, I know for me growing up, we had, I don't know, one practice a week at baseball, a
Right.
couple
Yeah.
till we got to college. And I got to my first college practice and it was twice as long as any we had ever done in high school. It's like halfway through, I'm like, okay, I made it, doing all right. And then we just kept going in 40-degree heat. And I was like, oh no, what is this? Like, so just to kind of prepare them. And again, for whatever they do. Because a lot of kids at 13 that like baseball, by 16, they might decide they like playing in the band instead. This
Yeah.
stuff carries over, building stability, movement coordination, all that stuff. It's going to help you in other parts of your life.
Well,
It's going to
this
help
even
you when you go
comes
to
back
move
to what
out.
we were talking about with the players connecting with you as a guy, right? Where
Mhm.
you kind of have some experience with, you have played collegiate ball, you have kind of made that first step that would need to be taken for anyone who wants to go pro, right? And
Mhm.
that was a thing that lacked in coaching in Alberta for decades. It's why baseball was always, if you were going to play baseball, you went to Southern BC, you went to Southern Ontario, or you went to the
Yeah.
US, or you weren't doing it.
Mhm.
Right. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about this. And I'm curious because you focus so much on strength and conditioning. And I know Yogi Berra famously said 90% of the game is half mental.
Mhm.
So,
Love
but
it.
in all seriousness, right? Like mental fortitude, it's touted throughout all sports leagues as like a big factor in kind of taking yourself to that next level.
Hugely.
When you're dealing with 13 and 14-year-olds, what do you do from a coaching standpoint to kind of work that muscle, the brain and the mental side of the game?
So honestly, a lot of that I do in the gym with the kids. So I talk about it a lot with my one-on-one training clients. Those in between set times in the gym is really where the magic of good coaching comes out because anyone can find a program, tell you to do it, say if you're doing it good or crappy.
Mhm.
But it's between sets where you're talking about, again, the whys, the whats. We're doing this because in your assessment, we saw we were lacking a little bit here. And it starts to get rid of some of that personal, oh, I'm just slow type of stuff that comes in your head when you're 13. You go, oh, this is something I'm not happy with. Say I'm a little bit slow on the base paths, but this is now 3 things we can do to help it. We're already doing it. It just kind of starts that process.
No, that's cool. It's almost like instead of writing off a skill set, being like, I'm slow,
mm,
you're like, no, you're 13. We can work around this.
yeah. So actually a perfect example, we just started our indoor winter U15 strength training group. And we had one of our kids who, anytime we mentioned speed power, he kind of just drops his head, drops his shoulders. He's like, he's a big swinger, that's his thing. with some of the softest hands I've ever seen at third base, by the way. Just got to throw that out there. And he's like, oh, we're doing speed power testing. Great. We did 10-yard dash. So like just pure acceleration. I think he came fourth on the team out of 9. And when I told him his time, like his jaw dropped, it hit the floor. And all of a sudden I could see that glass ceiling just shatter. Because now he knows, well, if I'm fast for 10 yards, why can't I be fast till the base?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of realizing it's there. And like the gym stuff is really cool for that. I find a lot of these kids, they're super explosive already. It's like in their baseline testing, all their power numbers are crazy good. None of them understand it. You know, it's kind of like a baby giraffe system at times. It's just like they just do it and it happens, which means they're capable of so much. And I think that's where, again, that like stability really plays such a role for them. Is, you know, it's like having a V8 on a cardboard axle. You can drive, but at some point that thing might just explode. You don't know.
Right.
And it's kind of, yeah, building the frame to match the engine that they've already got. So like seeing them realize how strong they are with some of the strength numbers, and just like literally you can see the glass just break and they go, oh man, I could be strong or big or whatever
Faster,
it is, you know?
yeah.
And it gets rid of that personal aspect, which again carries over into every part of your life. You know, you want to change a bad habit you got, sitting there saying I'm terrible because, you know, whatever it is, I picked my nose, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to get you to stop it. But saying, why am I doing it? What could I do instead? Like it just builds that problem solving essentially. And that's where, like, honestly, the name of my company, MW Strength and Development, I wanted to make sure those were separate because that development is so much more. You know, every kid that trains with me to be a better ball player or a better athlete should be a better human when they leave, or I didn't do my job right. And by better human, I just mean like more capable to handle the craziness that life brings, you know?
Yeah. I just talking to you, man, I can tell how passionate you are about coaching. It's very cool because, you know, coaching isn't for everyone. There's a lot of even pro guys who start getting into coaching and they're like, nah, this isn't for me. You know, whatever it is about passing on the knowledge or just kind of connecting one-on-one with people, not everyone can do it. So that's very cool that you're able to do that. And I know your role on the Cardinals right now is even expanding. Can you kind of get into some of the new responsibilities you're going to be handling?
So yeah, basically that's where they want me to start trying to design this kind of long-term strength and development plan for the organization. So starting at the younger ages, progressing through as we go, which I'm really excited for, again, as far as just setting the kids up for success, physically, mentally, health-wise. But just for the idea of building that Cardinal family. You know, you come in at 10, you play for a couple of years, get better, get stronger, build these friendships, get this high level coaching. You're going to want to stay till you're 13. And then again, because we're offering this stuff and building them up and developing them in such a high level way, I would say, it's just builds more and more. And when that kid's having success, his little brother is going to want to play there too.
Right.
And now we've got this huge system just churning out Cardinals everywhere you can think of. And that's kind of the long-term plan is, you know, be recognized.
Build an Okotoks Dogs. Yeah.
That's it. You know, like they're basically the gold standard for this kind of organization, you know? So always kind of nice, honestly, having them over there as a kind of a benchmark to measure as we progress and grow as well, you know?
Not to rewind too far back here, but I know you were touching on the fact that a lot of these kids, to relate to them, you almost have to give a perspective, the hockey perspective. Are you noticing more and more, I guess, just love of baseball in general without needing to kind of be like, guys, like, this will help hockey as well? Like, are there pure baseball nuts that don't even want to play hockey on your team, or is it still pretty split?
Yeah, I'd say definitely more than when I was growing up.
Right.
Like, I think about the teams that, you know, me and Adam played on, probably 2 or 3 of us that really kind of dialed in on baseball by that point.
And everyone else was keeping in shape while they
pretty much
playing summer sports. Yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly, like, I kind of expected that a little bit getting back into coaching this year with the Cardinals, like being on field coaching with them. that, you know, we'd get a couple that really love baseball, a few that are there because they're good, and a few that are there because it keeps them in shape till hockey or keeps them busy through the summer, you know, which is what it started as for me. Honestly, it took me a year of playing and I went, oh crap, I think I love this more. But yeah, like in talking with the parents and the players at the end of our season, and the amount of interest we had getting signed up into our U15 strength conditioning program, I really started to see like I'd say a good 3/4 of our kids are pretty big into baseball. You know, and hockey's still up there for
Yeah,
I'd
of
say a good
course.
handful of them, right? And a lot of them are really high level, like AAA, AA players in hockey. But like they definitely love the game, you know, in a different way, I think, than a lot of, and that might just be being out here versus being in BC back then too,
Yeah.
potentially. But yeah, I definitely see a lot more of that here, which is really cool. Like even having a couple of kids and talking between starting this program and our season ending, they were telling me like, "Nah, this is the year. Like I think I'm focusing on baseball. Like
Yeah.
I like it more. Hockey sucks. I'm over it."
That's
Um,
great. This question really has nothing to do with the kids playing baseball, but do you find most of them are Jays fans? Like, are they all do they follow the majors at all?
there's still a little lacking there, I would say. Like there's still probably half the team that doesn't really watch many ball games live on TV. Um,
Which
but
is why
honestly,
MLB is failing right now.
that's it. You know, like for me, that helped me learn the game, being that I didn't start really playing until I was 14, 15 almost.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
you know, I
you would
watched
have been
so
what, Matt?
much.
6, 7 years old when the Jays were winning World Series?
Mhm. And my only memory of that being that my household was not sports heavy at all was my sister would get the little Blue Jays comic books that came
Yeah.
out. They had like 4 cartoon characters, like the Burger King characters, kind of. That was the only thing I knew. I remember asking my dad once, like, what is this even? He's like, oh, they're a really good baseball team. It's like, oh, okay, like out the brain. I'm not gonna need
Yeah.
to remember that. And then yeah, fast forward, 10 years from that, and I'm a diehard Jays fan.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how it happens.
Well, it's almost frustrating to hear it, because I
Mhm.
love Major League Baseball so much. Like I'm such a fan of baseball in general. And you see it more and more where kids they'll be a fan of the game, but
Mhm.
not watch the pros, which I think might be the only exception in sports. Like everybody's an NBA fan or an NHL fan, and then they play because they grew up as like 3 or 4
Yeah,
following the game with their parents, and then they'd start playing at 6 or 7, right? Whereas like
yeah.
baseball, it's like, well, you got to do something in the summer. Who cares what the pros are doing?
Yeah, it honestly, yeah, and it's one sport that, like you said, I see that way more in than any other sport. Like, no one watches. I don't know. I guess yeah, everybody watches all those pro sports, and a lot of them aren't diehards,
Yeah.
But I know a lot of diehard Jays fans that still don't watch. And to me,
Yeah.
I think,
Right.
like you said, I think that's Major League Baseball. I think that's, I mean, we can go into that topic. Some of these rule changes and things that are there for cleaning up TV broadcasting,
Yeah.
it doesn't clean up the game in
No.
some cases. I'm not saying all of them are bad or anything, but in a lot of cases, I look at the argument for and against some of the rule changes they've done in the last 5 years. And it's like, well, that was so you could squeak in 2 extra commercials.
Yes.
That didn't save anything game time. The game times are the same as they were. We're finding that same space because you filmed it with commercials now.
Well,
It's
I'm
still a,
curious if you could change one thing about the game that would make it a
mm,
little bit more accessible to, let's say, a 9-year-old who just loves playing ball.
I
Is it the
think on,
length? I don't even think it's the length of the game.
no, because to me, it feels it's like a play. Like you get like 3 acts. You get the big burst out at the beginning.
Yeah.
Some games blow you out, 5 runs first inning. Some it's nothing, and you
Yeah.
just see an ace pitcher dealing, throwing bullets for 4 or 5 innings. The middle innings are where things get a little shaky. You're switching to a reliever, it's hit or miss. He might
Yeah.
throw a dinger, he might strike out the side. And then the last inning gets crazy exciting. It's close game.
Yeah.
Bring in the fireballer and shut him down. It's like I feel like there's something there to appeal to everyone. You might phase out for an inning or two, and I think that's the beauty of baseball. That's what made it accessible back in the day for people
Yeah.
is at some point, yeah, you might fall asleep for a little 20-minute day nap. It's a Sunday day game. Why not?
Yeah.
And you missed inning 3 and 4 and you're back in time to see Doc lock out the fifth and then watch him cruise the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times I've done that over the years, right? But yeah, honestly, to make it more accessible for the kids, I think it's letting the kids see what the players are doing. Let them see how much fun they have. That's where some of this stuff, like,
The
again, I'm an old
unwritten
school
rules.
guy, the unwritten rules. I'm a big believer. That's one of the things that made me fall in love with baseball is the tradition, the unwritten rules,
Yeah.
like, I love that about it. It's
Yeah.
just so, yeah, just traditional, passionate. It's almost patriotic,
There's a romance to baseball.
100%, 100%. And, but at the same time, you need to see that excitement. When you see Tatis freak out because he did something insane, or
Yeah.
even better, you see his teammates freak out because Tatis does something insane every time he touches the field. I want to see that. That was the exciting thing watching home run derbies in the past, was you see the other players losing their mind on the sideline.
Yeah.
It wasn't
like
about
when Vladdy just went off there 2 years ago. Like you could you could see shock and awe in Albert Pujols' face, and
Yes.
like what? Like
perfect example. So the year I really kind of took my health into my control. So like I was always the chubby kid, out of shape, and just kind of hung in there because I was smart and worked my tail off.
right.
Also probably why I was afraid to say I was hurt, because at that point I'm just a headache that's no good. Get rid of them, But during that period, I just started lifting, started eating better, and I'd go to the gym and lift aimlessly for 2 hours doing whatever at the time. And then I bought on Apple the Josh Hamilton home run derby. I think it was 2005, the last one at Yankee Stadium. And or after 2005, sorry, I think it was 07 or 08 was the Yankee Stadium one. And I would watch that on repeat as I did another hour of cardio every day. And for 3 months, I would just rewatch that same thing. It was 3.5 hours long, and basically watch it twice a week and just get tingles, like everyone on the field's jaws dropping, every ball going 500 feet. Couldn't have written a better script. He's got his 80-year-old backyard field throwing guy throwing him BP at Yankee Stadium. Like, that's romantic baseball, And I feel like they get a little too much broadcast, where you don't get to feel that. You don't get to see the emotion when a guy hits a big home run. Another good example, the Bautista bat flip.
Mm-hmm.
I was at work at a gym full of 1,000 people were in there at the time, probably. And during that last inning, the entire gym stopped. And this is people, like, I'd say half of them, 3/4, are fair weather fans.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. The whole gym stopped. No one was moving. Everybody was just looking at the TVs. And then he hits that ball, throws the bat. It was insane. Like, I did a whole lap. I ran all the way down, screaming, ran back. It was nuts, Let them have that. Like, let the pitcher stare you down when he strikes you out. Clemens did it forever.
Yeah.
And the idea that, like, I get, if you're barely making it, hanging in, call up, call down guy, maybe don't try to show guys up too much. But at a certain point, like Sammy Sosa, that used to talk about early in his career, that all of his antics and his routines and his personality was holding him back from developing as a player. That's why I got traded a couple of times.
Yeah, sure. That's a nice way
maybe
No,
maybe
go ahead.
He doesn't turn into the guy he is without those routines. Like, maybe that's what let him struggle for those 3 years in the minors, figuring it out, getting told by everyone you're not good enough, stop. And then it finally clicked. And from that point on, you're going to get louder, and like, think Josh Donaldson. He was always a loud player, boisterous. And then he got good, and your voice just carries a bit more,
Yeah. Like the tamping down of enthusiasm that old school baseball folks do in today's game it drives me nuts, because don't get me wrong, I do love the old school aspect of the game. There is a tradition and a romance to it that doesn't exist in any other sport. But oh man, to watch Jose Bautista literally win the ALDS with a home run in the 7th, after that 7th inning was so insane to begin with.
Oh my
and
God,
watch him flip his bat,
baseball.
not to show anyone up, right? Like, it was just like the biggest moment of his career, and then watch everyone pile on. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. And again, that 7th inning, I legitimately had almost rescinded baseball for life. Like, it was so tense already. And then that play happens. And I'm like, if we lose this game, the biggest Jays game I've watched in my career as a Jays fan, on that play, I've never watched baseball. I was like, I can't lose it like that. Like, let him hit a dinger.
To watch Russell Martin throw the ball. Like, I've never even seen anything
the butt
like
end
that.
Of the bat. Never.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way we're losing this and not going to the World Series because of that, you know? And then that low to 1 inning later, just Andrus makes 3 errors, the only 3 he's made in a decade. And then the home, like, there's no way you're not feeling that on the field. If I was feeling that as a Jays fan watching the game while at work, I'm pretty sure the guys on the field were nuts. You know, like, let them show it, let them feel it. You know, don't make the rookie hide his smile when he hits his first career dinger. Let him enjoy the moment, man. Like, he might never hit another one.
Exactly.
That's the thing about baseball, you know? So, like,
you never know.
And I think that's a big part of it is, like, back in the day, it was, barring you get injured, it was dang near like a lifelong contract. Oh, you're in the pros. No rookie gets your spot till you just can't play anymore. Is almost how it was, unless you were the Mickey Mantles, the Babe Ruths, you know? And I feel like that, like, how can you enjoy yourself the whole, like, enjoy that little moment every time? Because you might never get your shot again, you know?
Yeah, it's a good way to live life. It's for sure. I mean,
100%.
Enjoy your wins.
Make the best of it all, and, you know, don't get too low when you're down, but
don't get too low when you're down, and enjoy the wins.
That's it.
So I'm curious here, because I know Adam said that you're a pretty big analytics guy and that you've always been like a numbers dude since he's known you. In fact, he kind of, this is his words here, but he's like, you used to drive him nuts playing baseball video games because you would spend more time altering the batting stances and making the numbers match up with reality than you would playing the game. So I'm curious. I mean, in the under 15 league, is analytics something that is even on the radar, or for the most part, is it fundamentals and the numbers come later?
I think in some places they try to start bringing that in at this age. I mean, it's right at that age where you could kind of start debating it a little bit.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I think we pulled out a radar gun at tryouts last year and didn't look at one the rest of the season.
Right.
You know, at that age, I'd rather your arm be healthy and you perform as good as you can while feeling good. And through the year, we see some progress, you know, like, what's going from 70 to 71 going to do for a kid that's 14?
Right.
It doesn't matter. And sweating, trying to get to 71 will probably make him compensate through his legs somewhere or something else, you know?
Right.
So it's more about the execution, the feel, the development of the athlete as a whole. And then kind of once they hit, I'd say kind of after about 16 is kind of where I think you could start looking at that stuff more. And two, like, you're looking at things like pitch development. That's one of the cool things I really like with the analytics, and seeing the slow-mos, the velocities, the spin rates, the trajectories, all that stuff is really cool to me. You don't need to see the spin rate on a 13-year-old to see if his curveball is working, you know, and getting a tiny bit more spin rate isn't going to change it all that much, I don't think. Not to the point where it's worth putting that much attention and focus in.
Well, I am curious then, how much attention do you put on pitch variance? Like, are you working on curveballs? Are you working on changeups and stuff like that? Or is it more get the ball across the plate, guys? Like, we're working on accuracy.
For me, it really depends on the pitcher. Like, even at this age, that's where I'm a very individual kind of coach.
I love that.
It's like the start of the season, it was basically super fundamentals. Like, use your back hip, drive with your legs. Let's see what happens. Most of them, that makes them pretty efficient as a 15, 14-year-old pitcher. You know, they're getting it near the plate most of the time. And then from there, you kind of, like, I came in, again, kind of new to the team, new to the organization. And my coaching style is always ask a lot more questions than tell. So even with kids that are 13, and I think this is how I relate with them well, is like, I talk to them like they're adults almost in some cases. I ask them, what pitches do you throw? What do you feel good throwing? You know, what do you feel is a strong pitch, a bad pitch? And then we kind of go from there, because sometimes what they feel is a good pitch doesn't play. You know, I got a great curveball, and every time they throw it, it gets yacked. Probably not a great curveball. So, but what we can do is find ways to then make it a better curveball if they want to make it that way. Or we could look and say, hey, man, your curveball is not playing, but that changeup that you accidentally throw is nasty. Like, let's double down on that. Has anyone shown you, you know, a little grip change, things like that? And it's more or less about tinkering. Because again, I feel like I've had my swing redone by so many coaches over the years that I don't know what my body's natural swing is anymore. Like it's so over manicured that I never want to do that to an athlete, kind of lock them up into these positions that aren't actually transferable into the game. You know?
Yeah, where you tinker so much that it's not even the swing anymore. It's their own mental block that they can't
That's
get
it.
past. Yeah.
That's it. You know, like that's the worst thing you can do to an athlete. You know, that's basically giving them the yips, right?
Well, the
Like,
mind
that's
is an
yips.
amazing
It's in
thing.
your brain
Like
and you can't make a throw.
it's
It's
incredible. Like it
Yeah.
is incredible. I remember watching it happen to Lourdes Gurriel at second base
Yep.
at the beginning of 2019, where you're like, he was never touted for his defense. But I mean, the guy was playing second base and was a professional baseball player. And for like 5 games, he couldn't hit first. Like it was mind blowing.
And he's got a cannon for an arm. Like
Put
if
him
you
in
just
left
throw
field.
it like you would from the
Unbelievable.
outfield, it'll get near first base. It's not far enough to get too off trajectory, you know?
Well, shit, he was in line. He was a finalist for a silver or for a gold glove this year, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, for a guy who was a nightmare only 1 year
Was that
earlier.
2 years ago?
Right?
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, I was really impressed to see him in there, actually. I was proud to see that.
Yeah.
I do also
All
have
right.
to say one thing. I got to say one thing real quick.
Please.
On Adam's comment about myself getting stuck in the numbers playing video games.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I killed time through quarantine this year, man. Gyms were closed. I couldn't work. And I went, you know what? It's been a few years. I went nuts. Like I got the best MLB The Show roster you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like everything, minors, contracts, prospects. It's dialed out, stances, everything. Like I'm stupid like that. And I probably played 30 games.
I love it, man. I love it.
I love
All right.
that stuff.
Before I let you go here, I do have one more question about just coaching in general. And then if we can just nerd out a little on the Blue Jays for a few minutes before we get you out of here.
Heck yeah.
All right. Do you have a moment or a story that stands out in your mind during your kind of coaching career, a win or even a player's performance that you want to bring up?
That's a tough one. We're talking like inspirational, like happy moments. We're talking funny moments that just made
We
me.
can talk whatever you want, my man. You can even say no, and we can move to the next question.
Yeah, right. Play the Barry Bonds.
No comment.
Yeah. Next. That's a stupid question. I mean, first one that comes to mind is a funny story from actually the year of coaching with Adam back in the day. And we had this one kid on our team that I'd say was probably top 3, like toolsy, athletic, saw so much potential in this little guy. So much so that we like gave him every position he could try to succeed in. He was supposed to be our gold glove second baseman. Lights out again for an 8-9-year-old. Take that with a grain of salt. And just all of a sudden decided he was done. Would not get off the field, like sitting on the field, picking dandelions, wanted nothing to do with anything. And like, not even like hey, you want to go somewhere else? I'm sorry. We didn't know you didn't want to play too. No, I don't want to play. Don't want to play. And it was, I don't know, it probably took almost a whole inning of trying to just like figure it out. And we're both just like, man, you can't do anything. Like, this kid just doesn't want to play right now, you know? Yeah, like seeing that was definitely one of those like, okay, reminders that we're coaching little kids.
Yeah.
Don't take this too serious. You know, because at 14, 15, trying to coach, my brain was, hey, I want to coach these kids like they're pros. We're going to really help, you know, like kids that age, you just need to make them love baseball, you know? So yeah, it kind of reminded me of that, put that perspective back into it.
Is that something that you even pull from today? Like, I'm sure that's a memory or a story in your mind that like sometimes you got to remind yourself these kids are still just 14, right? And like the love of the 100%. Game goes a long ways.
100%. Like with our group I coached this year, they're still at that age where like that was one of the big thoughts was all it takes is 1 year not doing something you love because of something like COVID or an injury, or you get sick 1 year or something, you know, and you just never go back to it because you just doesn't cross your mind, and you don't love it any less. You don't consciously think you miss it, but I mean, man, I've been there. There's a part you're missing sometimes.
Yeah.
And you never you don't find that thing to fill it again. and they're at that age where it's easy to fill that with friends going out, like it's right at that point. If you can give them more stuff to be passionate about, I think kids at any age, you're going to see a lot more focus, a lot just more genuine, just nice kids,
Man,
like,
that rings so true. It's so funny that like I hadn't really thought about that. Like I played hockey my whole youth. I was just a house league player, and I remember I broke my leg when I was 16, and then I wound up missing the playoffs. Our team went all the way to the finals, and like we lost in the finals, but just to have like a broken leg. And after that, I was just like, I'm done with hockey. Like, I was just so frustrated and upset that I missed it. And honestly, man, until I did stand up at 26, so like for 10 years, I did not have that like passion again.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know I was missing it, like.
Yeah, that was me with baseball. So like I went to TRU. I would say, a cup of coffee as far as college baseball goes. I played like one fall season. Over 2.5 years of going and kind of partially being with the team. And just, I played through like stupid, crazy injuries. Like the one year I had an ACL tear that I didn't know about and didn't tell anyone about. So about a month into fall season, it was just kind of over. It's like, well, I'm not going to tell anyone I'm hurt. I'll just kind of leave. And just overall, like between that, didn't have the greatest experience while I was there. In part, I think, because again, I had only played a couple years of organized ball. And all of these guys are kind of looking at me as like, they've been doing this since they were 8, 9.
Right.
I was definitely pretty shitty, like I wasn't a great ball player, but I always felt like, the coach saw something in me, so I'm there for a reason. But yeah, I didn't have the greatest experience there. And then I moved out to Calgary and was getting ready to actually go to UFC tryouts to play ball here. And in the summer of getting ready for tryouts, I think I sprained my ankle 3 times over like a 2-month span, like just ridiculous freak stuff. Essentially I moved like crap and was pushing too hard. Stuff that current Matt would be able to fix, or at least help.
Yeah.
And so that ended that. And at that point I was just like, well, I'm not playing ball if I have to be that guy that was like, well, I used to play shortstop but now I got a bad knee, I'm pitching or playing one. Like I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So I just didn't play. Like I quit softball, everything, coaching, all of it, other than like strength training coaching for about 5 years. And then a buddy of mine at the gym, actually, one of his clients was in a tournament and was like, crap, one of our guys got hurt. Can you come out and play one game for us tomorrow morning? Like we need someone. My trainer said you're really good or whatever. And even if you're not, we just need someone. Who cares? And I went out and it was like
oh yeah, I love
for
this.
the first time, like boom, hit a ball and I go, oh man, I miss this. I love this. These people, like the whole thing,
Yeah.
And that was kind of the start of what sprung me back on track with all of it. But yeah, those periods away,
that's
like
great, man.
You don't realize you miss it. Like I was still watching ball, I still followed it.
Yeah.
I'd talk about it, which made me feel like I was still caring about it. I was still getting my fix, but it wasn't,
Passion is missing from so many people's lives, and it's so awesome that you found it again, brother. That's great, man.
Thank you, man.
Let's talk Jays for a second here. Obviously, 2020 has been just a shit year, but oh man, what a beauty to see a little bit of playoff baseball. How unexpected was that?
No doubt. That was a nice little surprise.
Right?
When they announced the 60-game schedule, I instantly saw we had some chance.
Yeah.
But you always want to play a little bit, play it easy, especially after a couple of really rough years, to be like, yeah, no, we're making the playoffs this year. Like I'm an Oilers fan and they do that every year and it kills me because we're not going to the cup every year, guys,
Isn't being a diehard fan the worst?
Oh, it's tough. And it's like legitimately, there's no rational reason. You ask, I'm like, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I just like to emotionally abuse myself, I guess.
Yeah, this is where I get my self-sabotage in, I guess. Just picking teams that never want to go all the way.
So tell me this. When you look at this Jays team right now as the way they are, okay, if you could add only one of the next free agents or guys in trade, who would it be? And how close do you think the Jays are legitimately to being an actual World Series contender? Okay. So your choices are Trevor Bauer, DJ LeMahieu, Francisco Lindor, or George Springer. Thoughts?
So that's a tough one because it could go multiple directions with it. Like that's one of the things I love about the makeup of our team right now is there's so many movable pieces. Vladdy can go across to one again. There's talk of him playing 3. Outfielders can rotate. Biggio can play anywhere. Throw him a catcher. I bet he'll figure it out. My initial thought is I think we need one more like top flight pitcher.
Yeah.
So my first thought is going to Bauer. But when you start taking into account the actual financials, things like that, I don't know if he's the best option out of that group.
Yeah.
I feel looking at that list, I would be all over bringing in someone like DJ LeMahieu.
Right.
Let him play second or third, however they work that out.
Yeah. Flip him back and forth with Biggio. They could do it
let
all
him do it
day
all.
long. Yeah.
That's it. Teach our guys that approach that he has that's one of the best in the game. Be a leadoff hitter we haven't had since Shannon Stewart.
Yeah.
And the Reed Johnson days. Throwback right there.
And you're nailing it because let's face it, man. LeMahieu in that one spot, all of a sudden Biggio's hitting 6th. And don't get me wrong, he was a phenomenal leadoff hitter this year. But to have a guy who is going to take some walks and deepen that lineup in that 6th hole, and all of a sudden Lourdes Gurriel's hitting 7th, and now we're starting to look like the Astros
and
or
Lourdes
the Yankees,
has guys on
right?
base in front now, right? Yeah. And then with that, you add maybe just like a complimentary piece as far as the pitcher this year. Hope one of our guys on the verge breaks through because we've got 5 guys that are right there.
Half a dozen of them, yeah.
Yeah, that at any point they could just crack through and be good to go. Pearson next year could click and be that number 2 starter we need. I'd say I wouldn't bank on that being the age and health stuff there, but give him some time. I think he will be that guy. Like
I think so too.
Insanely talented.
If he can stay healthy, I think he'll be that guy. Yeah.
That's it, right? Just based on stuff alone. Like he could go in there half not thinking about it some days and still probably be decently successful as a baseball player.
I mean, obviously that second game of the wild card was so disheartening. Ryu was such a stud all year and then had his one big blow up in the playoffs. It sucked.
Yeah, when it matters most.
But watching Pearson come in and the first pitch he throws hit 101 and you're just like, oh. And I don't know if you know this, you're a stat guy, so you probably do, but that was literally the fastest pitch a Blue Jay pitcher has ever thrown.
Really?
Beating Brandon Morrow 101.1 and Pearson through 101.4. I know we're talking minute details and I would never know the difference, but still very cool, right?
Yeah. And I mean, he's still young. There could be more in the tank there.
Oh, he's 24. The age he's at,
he's barely learned his body, give him 2-3 years. Like Halladay, he clicked in right around 25, 26, and then was unhittable for the next 10 years,
Then he became
a
Hall of Famer. Yeah.
That's it. And that's where I kind of see it going. Bring in a complimentary pitcher type guy, a number 3, number 4, maybe this year.
Yeah.
Hope a young guy makes the jump. And then, come deadline, if we're really in a push, then you can send some pieces to acquire that pitcher you want, maybe.
I'm kind of I'm on board with what you're saying here. Like I think LeMahieu or even Springer would be the best. And then if we can bring back like even a Taijuan Walker, man, like I would love to see him back in a Jays uniform pitching in that 3-hole. Like heck yeah.
Is pitching the way I always thought he would. Like as a prospect coming up, like he had always had that stuff.
Oh yeah.
It was just a matter for him. The stuff I've heard about like tinkering with his repertoire a little bit mostly and a couple little pitch grip things, and all of a sudden it was there. And then obviously getting healthy. Like he's had some issues with health over the years as well.
Tinkering is so funny, eh? Like guys tinker sometimes. Like guys tinker when it works. Like the amount of times that I'm just like, I watch stand-up comics do it where they tell a joke beautifully, just nail it. Everyone's laughing. And then the next time they tell it, they're changing it. And you're like, what are you doing? You found it.
You hit the home run, man. Don't that's
like
totally
even
true.
Robbie Ray, right? Like I love that they brought back Robbie Ray. I think there's only upside there, and even if it doesn't work out, it's a 1-year deal. So big deal.
Yeah. But worst case transitions to the pen. And again, his fastball and that crazy slider will play from the pen pretty good,
A 29-year-old lefty that throws 98, like, yes, please.
And was it 2 years ago? I think he led the National League in Ks, or was
2017.
There you go. Yeah. So like if he's got that in him, I'll take him as a number 5 any day.
Please.
Seen some of those 5 starters that we've had over the years. You know, like I'll take Robbie Ray always
Every time.
over anybody except Gustavo Chassin.
I was just gonna say
All-timer.
Gustavo Chassin.
Goose,
so
my boy.
funny.
Yeah, it's an all-time.
Uh,
Yeah, soft spot for him forever.
yeah, me too. I remember he was it's funny because I've always been a huge baseball fan. Grew up with it since I was 6. My dad was big into the Jays, and I'm a little bit older than you. So like I was 10 and 11 when they won their World Series. So like for me, that was the world, right? Like grade 5, I remember my whole class just being nuts about it. And then I hit 16, 17, and sports just kind of went to the wayside for me. Like once I stopped playing hockey and I just stopped playing baseball and all that, you know, and I was doing radio, the morning show. And I remember shitting on afternoon baseball games because I remember being like, who can watch these? Who's not at work? And then I started doing this morning show and I was off at 10 a.m. This was 2005. And all these 11 a.m. ball games that were going on out west here, you know, I was like, this is amazing. This is for me, you know? And Chassin was just like, he was just like coming into the league then. And I remember he was such a, like, I mean, it didn't work out for him, but like, man, looked great off the start.
Crazy. Had, 2 good years and then elbow trouble, I think, for him too.
Don't forget his awesome cologne that he came out with.
Yes. That was one of my first, like, purchases off of eBay back in the day.
Isn't it blue?
I had to order the Chassin cologne. Yeah. I got that and a Johnny Mac long sleeve they did on a promotional day I ordered that year.
Oh, J Mac. There's not an ex-Toronto Blue Jay that more people love who was just a bench guy than Johnny Mac. Like
you can't not like maybe Mooney. I was
gonna say maybe Kawasaki, maybe.
But they're the same guy, you know, like pretty much. Yeah, no, Johnny Mac's just class. Love him.
That's awesome. Honestly, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time, man. This was great. We'd love to have you back.
Awesome. I'd love to be back anytime.
If you can do a little favor for us here before we get you out of here, would you be able to say, hi there, I'm Matt Wild with the Calgary Cardinals. You're listening to The Walk-Off with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
I can do that.
Give her.
Hey, I'm Matt Wild with the Calgary Cardinals. You're listening to The Walk-Off with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
Nailed it.
Nice.
Honestly, thanks again, man. I really enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll come back maybe in a few months. It would be great to have you again.
Anytime, man.
I love chatting baseball with you. You're incredibly knowledgeable. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Thanks. You too. Take care.